Sugarholics, this is your show. We got you pinned down today to the mat. We got Nisha Jackson in the house. The only reason we're laughing is she's actually watering. Her mouth is watering over this delicious cake that's here on the table today. And hi, Nisha, how are you?
I'm doing good. I don't know if I can have this sitting here. This was my idea to bring this in, you know, because it's a good example of what we're going to move away from.
Yeah.
But as I'm looking at this beautiful cake, did Peggy make this?
She made that cake.
I'm looking at this beautiful cake. I'm literally, I feel like I need like a little hanky or something to wipe the saliva that's coming out of my mouth.
It is, it's lemon and cream and some other stuff that's in it. It's absolutely delicious, and we made it for Steve Johnson's birthday, so there you go.
Happy birthday, Steve.
All right, so anyway, we are going to open up the phone lines. Nisha's with us for a couple of segments, and if you want to join the conversation about weight management and other things, you're more than welcome to do that. The phone number is 776-5368, 776-5368, or toll free 1-800-373-5368. All right, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Where do we start with? Should we get rid of the cake?
Yes.
Okay.
We need to get rid of the cake. It's
David,
beautiful.
take the cake.
It's beautiful, but I can't look at it. Actually, this is a good.
I actually got some frosting in my
I know. I was so tempted just to put my finger in that.
Okay.
You know, this is actually a good place to start is sugar.
Yeah.
Because I really think it's the big lie. You know, people are constantly eating something with sugar in it, or they're eating a bowl full of rice, or they're eating, 2 pieces of bread on a sandwich. And the reality is things made from flour, especially refined flour, and things that are like a bowl of rice turn to sugar immediately upon entering the mouth, just like a couple tablespoons of sugar.
Whoa.
So it's exactly the same in the mouth and in the gut.
Wow.
And the problem is that it really raises your blood sugar immediately. They're called quick carbohydrates. Mm-hmm. They raise your blood sugar, and then they raise your insulin, and your brain says immediately, it's time to start storing fat. So this is the problem with people who have too much fat around the middle part of their body, which is a lot of Americans today.
Right.
More and more people are developing so much fat around the middle part of their body because of the very foods that they're eating. But it's foods that raise insulin. So just like that cake that was sitting here.
So we are silently addicted to sugar.
We are. And, one thing that I want to talk about today, and we're going to take calls, and I want to make sure people know that they can call in.
Yeah.
But one thing that I want to talk to you guys about today is not only sugar, but even the artificial sugars and what they're actually telling the liver and the brain to do in the presence of artificial sugars in your mouth.
Such as?
Well, one thing that people do is when they're trying to cut back on, let's say, regular Coke, and they want to go to Diet Coke, and they think, okay, this is how I'm going to wean off. It'll actually be worse for you, believe it or not. We used to think it was better for you, but it's actually worse for you because it's about 180 times sweeter than regular sugar, which tells your body that this massive, when that much sweetness comes into your mouth, it tells your body via the liver that a huge load of food is coming in, and your body goes into this sort of this storage. And so you start storing fat to prepare for this huge amount of food that's coming in. So even though it's not a huge amount of food, it's just the sweetness of the sugar that's coming in. So the artificial sweeteners are actually worse for you than regular sugar because of how sweet they are and how it's telling your brain to store fat.
Wow.
So really a problem, because when your insulin level goes up, even with the artificial sweeteners, and I'm not talking about xylitol, and I'm not talking about stevia, I'm talking about the blue packet, the yellow packet, the pink packet.
Okay.
So when those sweeteners come in, your body makes more insulin than it should. And then when the insulin goes down, it leaves you exhausted, depressed, and craving sugar, more food. So the average person will eat 500 to 1,000 calories more per day with artificial sweeteners. So it's kind of a lie. When you think about it, sugar and artificial sweeteners are kind of a lie. They trick you.
Let me just say, take advantage of Nisha being here. If you have any questions for us, 776-5368, that's the local number. Or if you're outside the immediate area, listening up and down the coast, or watching on Roku or anywhere, listening or watching the Dove, toll free, 1-800-373-5368. All right, how do we curb this addiction? Or do we?
Well, what I tell my patients in the office is that just like this cake that was sitting here, my mouth really was literally watering, right? And that gives you a clue as to how sugar sensitive you are. So now I've eaten a nice breakfast, I exercised this morning, I'm not hungry, but I would have eaten that cake. Well, if I wasn't here, I probably would have eaten that cake. No, I'm kidding. But just to know how sugar sensitive you are, which is something you have to know about yourself, because I would say the majority of, probably 80% of the population is sugar sensitive, but then there's different degrees of sugar sensitivity. So me, for an example, would be extremely sugar sensitive. I come from a family of sugar addicts. I have alcoholism in my family. I have diabetes in my family. So if you have some of those risk factors, it's probably going to make you a little bit more of a sugar addict.
Right.
So you have to know that about yourself, because the more addicted you are to sugar, so let's say you're full and someone puts down in front of you a plate of warm chocolate chip cookies. If you will eat those cookies, the degree of sugar sensitivity depends on what you'll do with those cookies. So a mild sugar sensitive person would maybe say, well, I'd probably have one. A moderate sugar sensitive person would have several. A severe sugar sensitive person like myself may have the whole plate and is actually thinking about going to the refrigerator and getting a glass of milk. And I mean, like, they're visualizing the whole scene. Their mouth is watering. So if you know this about yourself, it's key, because you have to go 72 hours without sugar or flour. I always say sugar and flour because white foods turn to sugar immediately upon entering the mouth. So a lot of people say, oh, I don't eat sugar, but I love chips, or I love crackers, and I love pasta, and I love, flour products. So it's the same thing in the body.
Wow.
So 72 hours is what you need to cleanse your system so that you can at least cut the cravings in half. As long as you eat it, you will be addicted to it. So that's the most important thing to understand, is that you're not crazy. You can overcome this, but you have to go 72 hours without eating it. Wow. Now, the other thing that I tell my patients to do, especially if you're very sugar sensitive, and the more you've eaten of it, and the longer you've eaten those foods, especially if you're going to Starbucks and you're getting a mocha or you're getting some of these sugary drinks, the longer it's gone, the harder it is to get rid of it. And they say, Perry, that sugar addiction is equally as addictive as alcohol is to an alcoholic, the chemical sensitivity. So you have to take it somewhat serious and really understand that it takes 72 hours.
Well, all the years you've been on the Dove, you've taught me to become a label reader.
Yes.
And I have to tell you, I can't find anything that doesn't have sugar in it.
I know. I know.
I mean, the Sobe Diet Tea, I think the Sobe Diet Green Tea doesn't.
Yeah.
I think it's 0.000.
Right.
But I think the sodium's through the roof.
Right. Well, the sodium might be high, but the other thing is, does it have artificial sweeteners? Because if it's sweet and it says 0 sugar, it probably has artificial sweeteners, which is worse.
So what do we do, Coach?
So some of the tricks are when I tell people no sugar, no flour for 72 hours. Now, if you're a major sugaraholic, you may have to wean yourself off and then go no sugar for 72 hours. But the other thing is, you have to eat a fair amount of protein and a fair amount of fruits and vegetables really regularly. So I always say you need to be on the infant feeding program. So every 2 to 3 hours, you should be eating something for those first 3 days. Because the problem is, as soon as your blood sugar drops and you're trying to not have sugar or flour products, your brain is going to scream sugar or chocolate. It's not going to scream broccoli, right? So you have to, the name of the game is to not let your blood sugar drop. So treat yourself right, eat regularly throughout the day, very regularly, every 3 hours at the most. And that way you can keep your blood sugar balanced and get through that first 72 hours. It's really important that you do that.
All right. Again, Nisha's here. She can take your calls, 776-5368, or toll free, 1-800-373-5368. Before we take a break, comment on stevia. Good or bad?
Yes, stevia is good. I would recommend stevia as a sugar substitute. It's not an artificial sweetener. It's a natural sweetener. It does not raise insulin level. It is sweeter than sugar, but it doesn't have the 180 times sweeter than sugar. So, and you just need a little of it. Some people don't like the sort of the aftertaste of stevia, but you can get used to it. So it's better. So xylitol and stevia are the two sugar substitutes that I would recommend.
And remember, if there's chocolate in Nisha's house, she will find it. Right?
Chocolate's okay in small quantities.
Oh, well, now there is. Well, let's talk about this.
Small quantities.
Dark chocolate, right?
Yes, about 1 ounce per day. And I have 1 ounce of dark chocolate every single night. Every night.
Every night.
Because the thing is, this whole weight loss thing and the whole sugar thing is so conditioned. Not only do you have genetics playing into it, but you have whatever you grew up doing. My mother fixed dessert every night of the week. We would have dinner, and then we would clean up the kitchen, and then we would all sit down and have dessert and watch TV. All of us as a family. This was like, a ritual. So I grew up having dessert, and it's so interesting how that becomes part of your life. Like, you always have to have something sweet. So for years I would fight my weight, because the last thing you want is to have a dinner and then to have something sweet afterwards, especially a dessert that has flour and fat and sugar in it. So I substituted 1 ounce of dark chocolate after dinner, and I always eat it right after dinner. I don't wait 2 hours, because that's another little trick that you can do with insulin that we should talk about. There's all sorts of tricks here.
All right, we'll be right back. If you got any questions, give us a buzz, 776-5368, or toll free, 800-373-5368. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Okay, we're back with Nisha Jackson. She heads up Ventana Wellness, and by the way, it's a terrific resource, ventanawellness.com. Thank you. And go to that website, check it out, and their clinic. They offer just terrific services. And today we're talking about weight loss, in particular sugar addiction. And for those of us who suffer with that, I'm included, I have to watch it. I really do.
I know.
And you're pushing all the buttons, because I know where my lines are. Do I go to the extra cookie? No. I know when I've had too much, and I'll go out and eat a bunch of turkey to see if, or beef or something, to get some protein in me.
People don't really realize, Perry, that the reason why they feel bad, they're having, they're hitting the wall in the afternoon, they're getting headaches, they're feeling depressed, they're flying off the handle with irritability. They don't realize that probably 75% of their problem is their diet. Yeah. Their blood sugar's going up and down. It's sending out it's releasing stress hormones. It's making them feel tired but wired. It has all of these negative effects associated with it. If they would just clean up their diet, their body is aching because sugar causes inflammation, so they have more muscle and joint pain. I mean, it's amazing what sugar will do. It really should not be something that's in our diet.
And it feeds fungus.
It feeds fungus.
Right?
Yes, and that's a whole other issue.
I had a sinus thing and an ear thing, and come to find out when I had it all cultured and tested, it was fungus. And I thought, well, there you go, sugar again.
Reoccurring ear infections, irritable bowel syndrome, gut problems, constipation, diarrhea, abdominal pain. I mean, you name it, skin problems.
Really?
It's so much related to the sugar that then creates more yeast in the gut. And this is a real problem.
All right, let's go to the phones. Hi, Dale. You're on the air with Nisha. What's your question today?
Well, hey, Nisha. My question is about xylitol. I bought some xylitol here a while back, and then I got online and I started looking at different articles. Of course, you can find anything you want there. But
yes.
One of the things that I found in several sources was that, a half to 3/4 of a teaspoon of xylitol will kill just about any dog almost right away, it says. And so I immediately quit taking it, because I decided, I just couldn't reconcile that with health.
Right.
So what do you know about that, and what do you think?
Well, actually, I don't know too much about the canine and xylitol. I would actually be surprised if that's true, but if it is, then keep it away from your dog. It certainly doesn't say that on the label, so that's an interesting. You're right. You can find anything on the internet, good or bad. But I don't know that about dogs and eating xylitol. But xylitol's been around for a long time. There literally have been thousands of studies that have been done on xylitol. And xylitol, I don't really like xylitol myself, but it's very excellent for preventing gum disease and helping with gum disease. So, and it doesn't raise insulin. So as it pertains to the excessive sweetness, it doesn't seem to have that problem, and it doesn't raise insulin. So it's a good substitute for people who are trying to avoid sugar or aspartame, the blue packets.
The one thing that I did read was that it's a sweetener used in a lot of sugarless gum, and that
yes,
if a dog is gets a hold of a pack of sugarless gum, it's just one pack of sugarless gum.
Ask your vet.
Is enough to nearly kill them if you don't get them to the vet immediately.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Dale. Let's see here. Hi, Diane. What's your question for Nisha today?
Well, actually, I had a comment. I recently I found out I had developed an allergy to corn. And when I quit eating anything with corn in it, I lost that spare tire around my waist. And I've done research and found all of the ingredients that corn is the base of. And it's amazing how many products there are that have corn in it. You can't get away from corn. Well, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, it's good.
And I found that if I avoid it, I keep that extra spare tire off. But
right.
If I eat it, I develop that.
Yeah. Corn is used in so many different food products. And I always tell people, whatever you use to fatten cows, grain and corn, you probably should stay away from, because that will fatten you too. But also, it may be that you're sensitive to that particular food. So the food sensitivities is a whole nother topic, and why a lot of people have weight problems is they don't really realize that they're actually sensitive or allergic to that particular food that they're craving. So I would recommend that you, if you don't know if you're food sensitive, to actually get a food sensitivity test, and that may be one of them for you, is the corn. It's also one of the highest sugar vegetables because it's very starchy. So we usually recommend staying away from corn or just having it in very limited quantities. Okay. So I'm glad you found that out.
Is there, with all the pills we have available to us today that does everything, is there anything that we can take to help curb the craving for sugar?
Yes. That's a good question. There's several things you can have. One is chromium, which is a mineral. And taking 200 micrograms of chromium before each meal, 200 to 400 micrograms before each meal, can be helpful to stabilize your blood sugar and not let the insulin spike so much with that particular meal. The other thing that can be very helpful is balancing your neurobrain chemicals. So if your serotonin, let's say you're very stressed and your serotonin level is low. If your serotonin level is low, you want to raise it by taking something like 5-HTP, because serotonin has to do with your cravings. So some people are literally craving sugar not because they're addicted to sugar, but because their serotonin is low. The other thing that we've used quite a bit is something called tyrosine, which is an amino acid, very safe to use. And it actually is a precursor to a neurobrain chemical called dopamine. And dopamine is usually what goes up when people habituate on alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, and sugar. So any kind of habituation, we often think dopamine is the neurobrain chemical that's not high enough. So tyrosine is an amino acid that can help build that level so that you're not fighting against yourself so much. Okay.
I think we have, is it Dr. Cohen?
Yeah, Dr. Conan.
Yeah, you wanted to comment on the dog comment.
Oh, good. Thank you for calling in.
I was just listening, and I just wanted to let you guys know that, yes, xylitol is extremely toxic to dogs, even in very, very small amounts. So if you're using xylitol for a sweetener, please do not let your dog get into any of it. It's very difficult to treat, and it can be fatal.
Wow.
Thank you for calling in. We answered the canine question.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
Have a great day.
Okay. Hi, Lori. What's your question?
commenting about rice and flour, eliminating it completely for X days. Does that also include brown rice or 100% whole wheat?
All right. Thank you for asking that question, because I think that that's an important question to address. So one thing that I wanted to bring up today is for people to start referring to the glycemic index. The glycemic index is the amount of the release of sugar when you compare it to just real sugar like glucose. And then they took each food and they compared it to the release of sugar as it's compared to glucose. So glucose being 100 or 100% release of sugar. And then they took all of the foods available and they looked at how close they were to sugar as far as what they did in the blood with sugar levels going up, glucose going up, and insulin going up. So the key is to get as low on the glycemic scale as possible. So below 50, that would be, it would have 50% of the effect of sugar. So if you have white rice, it has a higher glycemic index. So it's closer to glucose or sugar than brown rice is. So really the name of the game is limited quantities. And it's almost the opposite of what Americans have done, is they have the big bowl of pasta and then a little amount of vegetables, or 2 slices of bread on a sandwich and having it be white bread as opposed to high fiber bread. So if you can reduce the amount that you have, so limited quantities with as high a fiber as possible actually slows the release of sugar. So it's not the quick packaged carbohydrates that we're talking about. And I think the difficult thing also is that it's convenience. So people often eat out of convenience. It's also cheap. So processed, refined carbohydrates are often very inexpensive. So these are the foods people are often going for, but they're creating health problems that they will pay for at some point in their life if they aren't already.
Have you analyzed Dave's Killer's bread?
Yes. Yes.
Is it good or bad?
And that's a good example. He has very high fiber bread. Yeah. He has spelt bread. He has bread made from barley, so instead of flour. So there's some other options there, and so start reading labels and looking at how much fiber is in it, because if you can get more than 6 grams of fiber in any one particular food, that's what you want to go for. Wow. So instead of having like cream of wheat in the morning or those quick little packets of oatmeal that are, laden with sugar, you want to have steel cut oatmeal. Right? Because it's higher in fiber, it has better protein in it. So all of that slows the release of sugar. That's one of the tricks that you can do, is increase the fiber. And it will make you feel full longer. All
right. Few moments we have left. How do you come off this? I mean, you can't just go to a quick stop, because you're going to go through withdrawals and we'll see you in ER.
Right, right.
So what do we do here?
Yeah, I think that the thing is that it's the 72 hours and feeding yourself very regularly. So now I would pick a 72 hours that you're going to go off of this in a period that you're not super stressed and you've been sleeping. Because sleep is actually very important for preventing sugar attacks. So if you've not had a lot of sleep and you're very stressed, it's going to be more difficult for you to stay on track. But you got to get through that first 72 hours. The other thing that I want to say is that for people who are really eating well and they're exercising and they're not seeing any change in the scale or their body, I would encourage you to start counting your calories. That's something we've kind of gotten away from in the past. Oh. People are saying, okay, just have some protein and some vegetables and some good fats, and we got focused on all these good foods, but we're just eating too much food. So it might be time for us to start cutting back on how much we're taking in. And I would also encourage you, for the first couple of weeks of trying a different type of weight loss, is count your calories and reduce them.
Count your calories, name them one by one. Thanks, Nisha. Again, VentanaWellness.com, and check it out. It's a great resource with a lot of information there. And, of course, check out their clinic, Ventana Wellness, here in Medford. Thank you, Nisha. Look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel, and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, welcome back. Well, it's been a while since we've had our good friend Avi Lipkin with us. He's the author and speaker and co-founder of Israel Today magazine. 30 years of experience in the Israeli Defense Force, IDF, reserves for 16 years, in the artillery reserves, 14 years in the IDF as a spokesman. And we really value our relationship with Avi because he's a tremendous resource. So we are really honored to Skype him in today. Hi, Avi, where are you?
I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Nice to see you again. How you doing, my friend?
Good to be back again on your show.
Yeah, great. Well, listen, tomorrow, as you know, Netanyahu's meeting with Obama, and Obama's being a little threatening to him. Where do you see these talks going?
Well, I don't mean to be facetious, you know, but I think that the world is beginning to understand that whatever promises the American government makes to Israel will never be fulfilled. I mean, you see what's happening today with Russia and with Ukraine.
Right.
This is a very clear message to Israel that the United States is not going to defend Israel under any circumstances. And so if Israel says, okay, we'll make peace, quote unquote, with the Palestinians, we'll give up the land, we'll give up Jerusalem, we'll give up this. And then, as you know, the Palestinians have no intention of ever having real peace with Israel. The incitement will continue, the terrorism will continue. And then when Israel inevitably has to put its foot down, the United States is going to say, well, you know, you're on your own.
Wow.
So if I were Netanyahu, I'd hold my ground.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens tomorrow, but it doesn't appear that this administration has Israel's back. And yet there's a lot of us in the country who support Israel are really sickened by our administration's stance with Israel.
Well, I always say it like this. I see 5 elements in American policy. I see the American people, I would say liberally, 70% of the American people claim to be Christians, go to church. The overall support for Israel among the American people is 70%. Congress, unbelievably bipartisan support for Israel, including many Democrats. And so that's about 80%. And the military are, you know, the American military sees Israel as a military ally. Israel marches in lockstep with the American military. Israel's 2 problems primarily are the State Department and the White House. And this is a tradition that goes back many decades, way before Obama. So, you know, part of the work that I'm doing is grassroots in churches all around the country to explain Israel's position and why Islam is a threat through the Palestinians to Israel, and that Islam is a threat to Christian America as well. You've got other great people, you know, like a former ambassador, Yoram Ettinger, who works very extensively in Congress, but he's also not going out to the grassroots level and meeting in churches and, you know, radio and TV all over the country like I do. So I think that this is a long-term battle for the heart and soul of the American people to stand with Israel. And, I mean, unless Obama goes for a 3rd term, he'll be out of there in 2 years. America simply has to find a way to outlive Obama. Yeah,
well said. All right. From your intelligence and, of course, the monitoring that you do for your magazine, what are you hearing in Arab media broadcasts concerning Israel?
Well, you know, the Islamic approach is to pretend that they want peace, to go through all the motions. And but of course, you know, if they're not ready to recognize Israel as a Jewish state, if they're not ready to back down from some of their demands, which basically call for the annihilation of Israel, then there will be no peace agreement. And, you know, if you have an Islamic system that says that the Jews and Christians are monkeys and apes, then apes and pigs, we have a religious problem here. And these people come to America, and then they say that we're going to pray to the same God. Allah and God are the same. It's called Chrislam, which is complete nonsense. It's, you know, those are the synagogues of Satan, because Allah is Satan. I don't know if you know this, but I have a 3-year jail sentence in Switzerland for saying that Allah is Satan, and that Islam is a criminal psychosis. You know, so there is a religious problem here, and I do believe that Obama is a Muslim. This is the information that my wife is constantly picking up as she monitors their broadcasts. And their plan is to Islamicize America. So the bottom line is, this is the long haul here. The Muslims are trying to Islamicize America, and I, Avi Lipkin, the Jew from Israel, am trying to Christianize America. That America should not, forget its Christian roots. America should go back to its Christian roots. Otherwise, America is finished. This is my opinion.
We seem at the point of constitutional crises, Avi, in America. We got a president that has clearly gone rogue, and we don't know how to exercise our balance of powers and our constitutional rights to stop him from governing through executive order, which means he basically can turn his back completely on Israel, and we can't stop it.
That's very correct, and that's the reason, especially in view of all the lies that he has lied in the last 5 years, this is the reason why Israel must stand firm, keep the territories that it has now. Otherwise, we're committing suicide, and America will not come to, under Obama, will not come to Israel's defense.
Wow. What is the real story on the West Bank? Who occupies, who owns, what's the real estate agreement there?
Okay, well, obviously, I would have to give a very, very long 2 or 3 hour speech on it, but let me just say it like this. If you remember Mark Twain visited Israel in 1867, and he said that he walked through the land of Israel for 2 full days and did not encounter a human being. And he said, if this is the promised land, I sure don't want it promised to me. The land was empty. There was no Palestinian people. What you had was, you had a Jewish majority in Jerusalem, and you had a Jewish presence all these 3,000 years in Israel. You had a Jewish majority in Jerusalem and in other places. And what happened was, as the Jews began to come back from many countries all over the world, so too did Arabs flock to the land of Israel looking for work. So you had Arabs coming from Saudi Arabia, from Sudan, from Iraq, from Egypt, from Syria, from Lebanon. And, because of the Jewish return, there was work. And especially after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the British mandate also brought more work. And so all of a sudden you had this this group of people, of Arabs and Muslims, coming to live. We have Turks also came to live in the land of Israel. And today all of a sudden they call themselves the Palestinian nation, which is fiction, never existed before. Until 1962, 64, the Palestinians were the Jews. The Arabs would be very incensed, very offended if you call them Palestinians. Now, regarding the West Bank, or properly called Judea and Samaria, are the heart of the Holy Land for the Jews and the Christians. That Jerusalem is never mentioned once in the Quran. Israel is mentioned 3 times in the Quran, that Allah commanded Moses and the Jewish people to take the land of Israel. It's in the Quran. Wow. It never said that it should be a Muslim country. But Jerusalem is never mentioned once. And the land itself, if you want to start talking about legally, who owns it? The League of Nations, and even before the League of Nations in 1917, said that there should be a homeland for the Jews in what was then Jordan and the land west of the Jordan River, which is what we know today as Israel. From day one, the Arabs were rejecting any kind of a territorial compromise over anything. 1936, there was something called the Peel Commission, which gave the Jews basically the land between what is today Tel Aviv and Haifa. The Arabs rejected that too. In 1947, the United Nations offered them this cockamamie map. The Arabs still said no, and the Jews said yes, even though it was a crazy cockamamie map. And then in 1967, they attacked Israel again, 48, 67. So Israel is constantly being attacked. It's not a question of the territories, the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, the settlements. All of this is irrelevant. The problem is a religious problem in which Islam cannot tolerate any Jewish or Christian presence, infidel presence in their midst. And so it's not a question of who owns the land. And the land, you can say legally today that they are disputed. And that there should be a negotiation over who's going to control what. Wow. But I think it's very important, and I'll conclude that point now. United Nations is not pro-Israel. But in 1968 and in 1974, United Nations came out with 2 resolutions, 242 and 338, saying that Israel should negotiate with its neighbors for new borders which are secure, recognized, and defensible. Nowhere did it say that Israel has to go back to the suicide lines of June the 5th, 1967. But that is the actual stance of the U.S. State Department, that Israel must commit suicide. Israel cannot give up Judea and Samaria because then Israel will not be able to defend itself. It will be committing suicide.
All right, one more question before we take a break. The current proposal on the table, does it include the two-state solution or proposed solution, and how do Jews respond to that?
Well, yes. I mean, the idea is this is what Netanyahu has been saying, a two-state solution. But if the Arabs are saying, that the Palestinians are saying that Israel must go back to the borders of June 5th, 1967, which are suicide borders, including half of Jerusalem, which Israel will never do, then there will be no Palestinian state. It's like, I don't know if you remember the Aesop's fables of the boy sticking his hand in the cookie jar, and he grabs so many cookies that he cannot get his hand out of the jar.
Right.
This is what the Arabs are doing. They're demanding so much that they're not going to get anything. And this has been tragically their mistake all along.
Wow. All right, let me take a quick break here. Avi Lipkin's with us today, and we're talking about the state of Israel and their surrounding so-called neighbors, and we'll be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Okay, we're back and continuing our discussion with Avi Lipkin. And by the way, he heads up the Israel Today magazine, and he's authored several books. Perhaps you have read some of them. If not, Avi, how can people get a copy of your books on your website?
People can either go to my website or call an 800 number. The website is VicMord, VicMord.com, half of Victor, half of Mordecai.com, my pen name.
Okay.
People can also call 1-800-540-0828. They will probably respond as Victor Mordecai, but Avi Lipkin is Victor Mordecai. But the books can be ordered on the 800 number as well.
All right, check it out. And can they get information on subscribing to the magazine there too?
You know what? I'm not sure, but if people write to me at my website, VicMord.com, or my internet address, which is VicMord2001 @yahoo.com, I'll give them all the information they need to order Israel Today.
Okay. What's the situation with Iran from your perspective?
Well, I think that what we are seeing here is an emasculating of the U.S. military to the extent that President Obama promised, it's another one of his lies, he promised that Iran would never get a nuclear bomb. Iran will get a nuclear bomb unless it is stopped by Israel. The United States will not go against Iran because who's backing Iran? The Russians. Will America do anything about the Ukraine? America's not going to do anything about the Ukraine. So, and I have news for you. After the Ukraine, you know what the Russians are going to do next? They're going to take Latvia. Latvia, one of the Baltic republics, has a 40% Russian minority there. So, of course, the Russian military has to protect its minority in Latvia, meaning reconquering Latvia. So, you know, the question is, if America has a military smaller than Pearl Harbor, America's in a pitiful state.
Yeah. Yeah, we're watching the defunding of our military. Now we got the crises in the Ukraine, and of course the other hot spots around the world. You've got Karzai basically sticking his finger in our eye on his way out the door. We're in pretty bad shape, and it's quite alarming because you wonder, we're not prepared to go in and do anything with Iran, and I don't even know if we would have your back if you go into Iran.
I'm sure we don't. I'm sure we don't. And this is a very complicated thing because, you see, Obama, according to different assessments, is either a communist plan, a Russian plan, which is one of the reasons why he would never confront Russia, or he's an Islamic plant, in which case he would never go to war against a Muslim country. And he said this in his book, that he would never go to war against another Muslim country. So from the economic perspective, if the Saudis, the Qataris, and others are floating the American economy and floating Wall Street, then the best thing economically is not to do anything and just sit there and go to bed with Islam. And Islam is taking over America. I believe today there are about 20 to 30 million Muslims in the country, and they're going to go up to 50 to 100 million because the Arab Spring countries are depopulating. The Arab Spring countries are self-destructing, and these people are going to starve, and they're going to come to the United States, and the Muslim president is going to receive them. So, you know, it's a horrible situation for the United States, in my opinion, unless people think that selling the soul of America to the devil for money is a good thing, then it's a good thing. But otherwise, America is going to be distancing itself from Israel, but also from Christianity.
Avi, how are you looking at these events prophetically?
Well, you know, I don't want to represent God because obviously I can't. Nobody can. But I think God has a remarkable sense of humor. And, for example, Hillary Clinton, for 4 years, when she was Secretary of State, she was bashing Israel. And all of a sudden, one day, a fruit vendor in Tunisia is arrested and because the policeman wanted a bribe, and they confiscate his card, and they confiscate his fruit, and they confiscate his scales to weigh the fruit. And then he was slapped in the face by a Muslim policewoman. He left the police station, poured gasoline all over himself, and he self-immolated, and he died. And the people there in Tunisia were watching this with cell phones. Everything was on tape. Everything was on cell phones. Within minutes, the whole country knew about it. And this internet thing, Facebook and Twitter and other things, Tunisia went up in flames. That was the beginning of the Arab Spring. And then it spread to Libya, and it spread to Egypt, and it spread to Yemen, and it spread to Syria. And I believe it's going to spread to Saudi Arabia and Jordan. And like I said before, you know, God reshuffles the deck every time. By the way, regarding Russia, you know, I'm not saying to do something against Russia or not, but I think Russia will be getting into extreme trouble if it invades the Ukraine. It will be a Vietnam for the Russians. And then I think in the end, the Russian people will rise up and revolt against Putin because the Russian people don't want one of these adventures in the Ukraine. What do the Ukrainians want? They want to do business with the European Union. They want to have a better life for their people. And so Russia has this territorial, not Russia, Putin has this territorial insanity of restoring the greatness of the Soviet Union. So I think the Soviets are going to have a big problem if they go into the Ukraine, if they overextend themselves in these wars, these adventures. And, you know, China is still there. China could do something too. And China is also a threat to Russia. Mm-hmm. So, you know, God is going to reshuffle the deck. I think from a prophetic perspective, Saudi Arabia itself is, excuse me, Saudi Arabia itself is going to experience the Arab Spring, and these jihadis who've been fighting all over the world, in Pakistan, and Afghanistan, and Iraq, and in Syria, these people are going to be coming home, and what's going to happen is that they're going to see the king of Saudi Arabia. King of Saudi Arabia is corrupt. He's doing business with the Christian West. These jihadis are the chickens are going to come home to roost, and they're going to blow up the oil wells. Saudi Arabia is going to go down the tubes. The Islamic world is going to go down the tubes. And in the end, you know that God is going to win over Satan. And I say Allah Satan. So all of these things are very simple. You know, 1 and 1 makes 2. Mm.
So you think that Saudi Arabia is heading towards some kind of civil unrest, much like Syria?
Absolutely. Saudi Arabia has 40% unemployment. And all this tremendous wealth of oil is concentrated in the hands of 6,000 princes of the royal family. But most of the people don't enjoy the wealth. 40% unemployment. There is no industry. The king is not turning Saudi Arabia green. The Shiites in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia are really suffering. I think Saudi Arabia is gearing up for the perfect storm. And it could be that in the end what's going to happen is it'll be the end of Islam, because I believe Saudi Arabia will be divided up and the oil by the one world government. And, you know, the oil wells will be secured by international forces. Otherwise, they'll get blown up and the world economy will collapse. And that's something that the one world government cannot accept. So your question was about prophecy. And so what I think is, you know, that I foresee the termination of Islam in the not too distant future. The Antichrist is not Obama, though he is salesman of the month. I think the Antichrist is going to come out of the one world government that's going to defeat Islam and impose their Antichrist or whatever on the world after they've brought peace and stability to the world. So I think we're in a situation now where the Islam, we will see the eventual collapse of Islam. They are pouring into the U.S. In the end, I believe their only solution will be to convert to Christianity. And it's funny, I'm a Jew saying these things, but a lot of the early Christians were Jews anyway, weren't they?
Yes. So, in spite of all of our problems in America, we're still the greatest country on earth. We got a lot of problems, no question about it. Do you think that America can recover from this Obama nonsense?
Oh, it has to. I believe it can, and it has to. And I know we're running out of time, but I will give one or two quotes which are very close to my heart. 200 years ago, there was a German philosopher by name of Heinrich Heine. And he said 200 years ago, the world is going to have to choose between the foolishness of the Americans and the despotism and tyranny of the Russians. This was 200 years ago, during the time of the czars. And Putin may not be a communist anymore, but he is definitely a czar. It's the same characteristics of 200 years ago. Now, Alexis de Tocqueville said in Democracy in America in 1840, I'm summarizing his books, he said that America will be the greatest country on earth because the American people are a good people and their pulpits are on fire for the Lord. Conversely, America will lose its preeminence when the pulpits are no longer on fire for the Lord. So in my humble opinion, the key to a strong, preeminent America is a strong Christianity in all Christian churches, in all denominations. I would say also one last thing. I've heard this. It's in the New Testament, it's in the Old Testament, that the foolishness of the Lord is greater than the wisdom of man. And, America is foolish in the Lord, I believe. That's why it has been world power number one this last century. As long as it remains foolish in the Lord. If you take out the Lord, which is what we see happening, then America becomes merely foolish, and then America loses its preeminence. So my message, and again, I'm a Jew, I'm not a Christian, but I'm saying the message is there must be a Christian revival in all the churches and in the American people for America not to lose it. And I do not see any other country on the face of the earth replacing America as the preeminent nation. Wow.
Beautifully said. Avi, thank you for your time. And let me just say, you can connect with him at 1-800-540-0828 to get some of his books. And again, your website, vicmord.com.
VICMORD.com. And I do answer all the emails when people write to me. And I should be on the West Coast in August.
Oh, really? Well, let us know when you're close out here. Maybe we can squeeze you in the studio visit as well.
Wonderful. I always suffer for Christ in Florida in the winter, and I suffer for Christ in Oregon and Washington and Vancouver.
Come on up, and we'll get you some, maybe some salmon fishing in or something like that. How's that?
Oh, I love the salmon up there.
Okay. Thank you, Avi. God bless you, my friend.
God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you. All right. Avi Lipkin with us today. Again, vicmord.com. You may want to check that out. And again, the 800 number, 800-540-0828. And you may want to check out some of his books. He has written is fabulous, and he's quite the spokesman, to say the least. And you may want to see what you can do to possibly subscribe to Israel Today magazine. Israel Today magazine. Check it out. That you perhaps have seen him on the Sean Hannity Show, Fox and Friends. He also has a pin name is Victor Mordecai. Maybe you have seen him for that or seen him on television with that name. So again, let me encourage you to check it out and check out his book called Is Fanatic Islam a Global Threat, which was a 1997 bestseller. Which, by the way, in that book, he also told about the possibility of a 9/11. And here it is. It happened. So you may want to check it out. Is Fanatic Islam a Global Threat? By Victor Mordecai. And, of course, his air name is Avi Lipkin. So check that out. All right. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at the Dove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.